Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's comes at us from Mario, Laurie Anderson, Waiting for the Barbarians. That's what we're going to dive into today. Then we have a video of it. The video title is Laurie Anderson's mind-blowing performance of Waiting for the Barbarians. That's big praise. Let's dive into it and see what Laurie Anderson's bringing for us today.
Now, I chose these two poems because they're both about expectations. And the first one, set in ancient Rome, and the government has come to a standstill. Everybody's arguing. It's basically a deadlock, a shutdown. And I thought, hang on, this sounds familiar. And they all seem to be waiting for someone, these strangers or maybe some kind of enemy to show up. So they're hanging around, waiting, trying to figure things out. And then there's a kind of a surprise ending. What are we waiting for? Assembled in the forum. The barbarians are here today. And why isn't anything going on in the Senate? And why are the senators just sitting there without legislating? Because the barbarians are coming today.
The barbarians are coming, the barbarians are coming, the barbarians are coming.
Yeah, the barbarians are coming today. So what's the point of coming, waiting for senators to make laws now? Once the barbarians are here, they'll do the legislating. Why? Did our emperor get up so early? And why is he sitting enthroned at the city's main gate? City's main gates in state, wearing the crown. Because the barbarians are coming today.
The barbarians are coming, the barbarians are coming today.
Yeah. The shifting accents on those,
And the emperor's waiting
rising
to
energy.
receive their leader. He's even got a scroll to give him, loaded with titles, imposing names. And why have our two consuls and praetors come out today wearing their embroidered, their scarlet togas? And why have they put on their bracelets with so many amethysts, rings sparkling with magnificent emeralds? And why
It's such a great use of a
are
choir.
they carrying elegant canes, beautifully worked in silver and gold?
The hocket between the two woodwinds.
Because the barbarians are coming today. And things like that just dazzle the barbarians. Don't our
An
distinguished
interesting
orators
rhythm pattern.
turn up as usual?
The bottom ostinato on
to
this.
make their speeches and say what they have to say, what they have to say, because the barbarians are coming today. They're bored by rhetoric and public speaking. And why this sudden bewilderment, this confusion? How serious people's faces have become. And why are the streets and squares emptying so rapidly? Everyone going home, lost in thought. Because night has fallen, and some of our men just in from the border say there are no barbarians any longer.
Interesting, the strong harmony on that descending
Because
pattern.
night has fallen, and some of our men just in from the board say there are no barbarians any longer. There are no barbarians any longer. What's going to happen to us without barbarians? Why are the streets so empty? Everyone going home, lost in thought.
This is the second time using the choir for
Why this
random
confusion?
murmuring. I think it's great.
This bewilderment. There are no barbarians anymore. Those people were a kind of solution. Unless we ourselves, unless we ourselves are the barbarians, unless we ourselves are the barbarians, unless we ourselves are the barbarians.
Immediately shifting the emotional atmosphere of this with just 3 notes, bringing the energy down but the intensity up. It's almost going in the direction of an elegy. There's definitely something somber about it.
And as you set out for Ithaca, hope your road is the long one, full of adventure, full of discovery. Lastrygonians, Cyclops, angry Poseidon. Don't be afraid of them. You won't see them if your thoughts are somewhere else. Always keep Ithaca in your mind. Arriving there is something you're destined for. And hope your road is a long one. May there be many summer mornings when, with what pleasure, what joy, you enter harbors you're seeing for the very first time.
Is there a...
May you buy fine things, mother of pearl,
I think there is an effect on her vocals.
amber and ebony, sensual perfumes of every kind. And may you visit many Egyptian cities to learn from their scholars. And always keep Ithaca in your mind. Arriving there is what you're destined for. But don't hurry the journey at all. It's better if it lasts for years. Ithaca gave you a marvelous journey.
There's less
Without her, you
interworking
wouldn't
of
have
the
set
musical
out.
side
She
into
gave you
this part of the song.
everything, nothing left to give you now. And if
I missed the first half.
you find her poor, wise as you will have become, so full of experience, you'll have understood by then what these Ithacas mean. So if you find her poor, Ithaca won't have fooled you. Wise as you will have become, so full of experience, you'll have understood by then what these Ithacas mean.
Huh. Huh. All right, I want to start with a little bit of a preface. I'm very much a music first kind of person, whether it is that I'm listening to music casually or in this setting, more critically, more analytically. Music to me is something to give your attention to, and it is when used, I don't want to use a massive blanket term here, but typically should be the center attraction in its use. I understand there are certain cases for background music. I understand that people listen to music in different ways. Some people just like to have sound on while they're doing something else. Some people will turn a TV on and just have reruns of a show. Other people will just put some music on in the background. Multimedia projects, film. A film without a film score would be kind of empty, but the music isn't the forefront key element of that. Like, I get it in cases. But when I listen to music, when I set out to say, look, I'm ready to listen to music, I want the music to be the core element. When you guys submit soundtrack songs for analysis, it's not usually the boring ones that are just four sad emotional chords that are to be played behind a sad moment. It's usually a pretty strong song by itself. And so I find this really interesting because I expected this to be music at its core, and it's not. The music is secondary to the poetry, to the performance even. Beyond that, there's not really a lot of technical components in here for me to break down. We have a cool little hocket at the beginning. We have some rhythmic diversity in the first half and some interesting accent patterns. But honestly, it's pretty rudimentary too. It's cool because it sounds great. The effect of it works really well in the context, but it's not complex in any way. The choir is heavily underutilized, and the entire second half of the track is ambiance and spoken word. There's nothing really for me to musically dive into on that. I feel that I am ill-equipped to talk about this song in the depth that it needs. I think it would be better for a poetic analyst or maybe someone who likes to talk about performance art more so than coming at it from a composer perspective, because honestly, the composition in here is pretty shallow. But I'm going to do my best, and we'll talk about some of the objective qualities and elements that are going on here, and maybe dive a little bit into my subjective experience with it. But I think if I do that, I'm just going to tick off Laurie Anderson fans. And honestly, I've already done that enough in my life, haven't I? I still get comments on some of the other tracks I've checked out from her. It just didn't click with me at all. And I think this, if we get there, we'll get there. But this kind of bounced off of me. I'm just going to throw that out there. So the first half of this track has the most musical components to it of the entirety of the song. It is in 4/4, but we have a cool, seemingly ever-changing rhythmic pulse at the bottom of the track. If you listen to the drum beat, if you listen to not listen to, but if you watch the conductor's hands, it is definitely in 4/4. And just a little bit of conducting 101 right here. 4/4 is conducted down, in, out, up. You can use both hands if you want. The conductor often used one hand and pointed with the other, which is pretty common too. Time in the right hand, conduction in the left hand. Conduction. This reminds me about electricity. But yeah, 4/4. But if you listen to the rhythmic cadence underneath everything in the song, it almost has, to pull it to a metal direction, since this is generally a metal-oriented channel, a djenty rhythm. That is that there is a lot of asymmetry in the rhythmic pulses. It already by itself, I believe, is closely written in a 3/4 time signature. I don't think that's entirely correct, and I do think that there is an extension by the end of the phrase for everything to wrap up nicely within the larger 4/4 phrasing. But most of it can be felt in a type of 3. However, even within that, the accent pacing is wildly all over the place. Much like djent, it isn't just a group of 3 and then a group of 3 and then a group of 3. It's like a group of 2 and then a pulse to kind of feel out a stopping point, and then a group of 4 and then that quick stop, and then a group of 3 and then a quick stop, maybe a group of 5. And it just feels like it's ever changing. It follows that asymmetric, difficult to parse out rhythm that fits neatly against the 4/4 as far as syncopation goes. And so you can feel it as a counter groove to the key pulse of the song. And that's exactly what djent does. And it's kind of interesting that I can draw that parallel so clearly here. That's what's going on the bottom of this track. And it's the most complex element of the track, but honestly, like I mentioned, once you kind of pull the 8-bar phrase out and transpose it, which wouldn't take long, you've got the whole idea. That 8-bar idea is just repeated ad nauseum. We do have a really cool hocket going on as well, where we have 2 woodwind groups. Maybe they are just 2 musicians, but I'm going to say groups just in case. And they'll do like but-up, 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 but-up. And they're just kind of going back and forth, having this little almost conversation. But the panning in the mix itself, mixed with the constant back and forth, the little gap between them, it's a hocket. If you were to put it all on one instrument, it would work just fine. But because it's 2 instruments, 2 different timbres, we call it a hocket. It's when multiple sounds come together to create a single line. Or another way of perceiving that is a single line divvied out piece by piece to other instruments, so that multiple instruments are going to play it consecutively rather than simultaneously. So that's kind of neat. It's a simple hocket, but it does provide some texture to the song, and once again, another rhythmic flavor to it. This one, though, leans hard into the 4/4, where the more djenty ideas push against the 4/4. So we do have that clashing going on there. Although in another sense, since there's very limited percussion in here, you can just see it as one giving us the beat and the other one giving us the syncopation, the groove that sits around it. The third idea in here that I really liked as far as the orchestral instrumentation goes is the dotted phrasing that we have from the strings every once in a while. And when you put a dot on a note, it implies, well, a dot next to a note, it implies that it's going to be 1.5 times the length. So if we're working with quarter notes, each note is going to be 1.5 beats in the time signature of 4/4. And this creates these groupings of 3. 1.5 beats is 3 half beats. And so we're going to be shifting between accenting or having a note change on a downbeat to an offbeat. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2, 3. And see how it shifts from downbeats to offbeats there. That shows up a lot in this run. It isn't consistent though. It isn't just a series of dotted notes. Sometimes we have a traditional or a standard note there, which kind of brings in from the 3 pulls to the 2, and that allows the rhythmic element to be controlled a little bit more. So it isn't just completely predictable. There are shifts within it where you expect it to go to an offbeat accent. You get another downbeat accent or something like that. But it is a nice swell. We have a rising energy into it. We bring the volume back down across this run. We do get some harmonic information out of this. It feels dramatic, but it is once again very rhythmic focused. While they are certainly setting a mood, the mood primarily comes from the timbre of these instruments, a lot of really warm sounds being woodwinds and strings. We don't have that brightness of brass. We did have at one point a glockenspiel type instrument. I don't remember seeing one, so I'm going to assume that she played it on her keyboard. But we did have that, and it was a brighter twinkling sound. It stood out quite a bit because it was literally the only instrument in here that had any sort of brighter timbre. So a lot of these moodier, warmer, more resonant tones giving us these rhythmic pacings, these rhythmic pulses. This is what dictates a lot of the atmosphere, more so than any harmonic component. We don't have happy chords in here, or sad chords, or angry chords. Nothing bittersweet or more complex, trying to incorporate multiple emotions simultaneously. We sort of just have this mood of intensity, waiting for something to happen. Maybe waiting for the Barbarians, but there's certainly a tension boiling that's ready to erupt. That is the main thing that goes on in the first, I don't know, half of this track. Beyond that, we have the vocals. We have Laurie Anderson's spoken word poetry. Occasionally, the choir will repeat something she says in a very harmonic and melodic fashion, or they will sing alongside what Laurie is saying. They are definitely spices to the vocal work rather than a key element of the vocals. They're not the main thing on display here. They help accentuate though what Laurie's doing. I had mentioned earlier I felt that the vocals, the choir was underutilized, and I still feel that way. But it depends on perspective, and we're going to touch on that in a second. Laurie comes through, though, very dramatic, almost sort of thespian, bringing a theatric edge to this. It's not so much, I think, about the words themselves, although I'm sure there's going to be import. She mentioned something about poetry that she chose for this. I don't know if she wrote it or if she read it and if someone else's poetry she wanted to use. But she mentioned choosing the poetry for this performance, so I'm sure the words mean something. But to me, the performance is a lot of my engagement with it. When she chooses to rise up and have more energy in the vocals, and when she chooses to bring it back down. When she chooses to pick higher pitches, when she chooses to pick lower ones. She's a very charismatic performer, and I think a lot of that comes through in her poetry recital, saying the poetry. But one thing that really stood out to me is how often she says the poetry as if she's reading it. And that makes sense. It's poetry. There are no notes that go along with it, but so frequently she was out of key with the rest of the band. And I found this to be a point of contention for myself. I never really liked it. I think putting spoken word in songs can work, but here her pitches are so close in range, but also in intonation to what's going on around her that you really feel the difference. You can feel that she's slightly sharper than everyone else. And to me, it just comes off as very ear-catching. It pulls me out of the experience. and just makes me think, dude, if you had just tweaked your pitch just a little bit, this would have been perfect. And maybe this was intentional, because there are times, particularly I mentioned when the choir sings along with what Laurie is saying, where the intonation is perfect. She is perfectly in key with the choir. Now, maybe the choir part was written to match her inflection. I don't know. But it seems really wild to me that at these moments, she chooses for the performance to line up intonation-wise. And then through majority of it, though, it's just on the cusp of intonation issues where I'm immediately pulled out of it thinking, dude, that's sharp, or dude, that's flat. Why? Just a hair bit. Just, tweak it up a bit. I don't know. It constantly pulled me out of it, though. That's the first half of the track. And like I said, the most complex. What comes after this is a violin solo from Laurie. I think it does a great job of embodying a sorrow. I had mentioned that it was pushing towards something elegiac, but just a general feeling of loss, of sadness, of pain, I think came through rather strongly. It was a short-lived solo, though. And out of this came, I was hoping, a return to form, bringing everything back together, but the orchestra fades out. The choir never does anything again, and it's just Laurie and some sounds. Bubbles eventually show up. There's not a click track, but a beat that's going on behind, some chordal movement. She eventually plays the violin alongside speaking the poem. We get a little bit of that. Again, though, the chords that she's playing, the dyads, which is just 2-note chords, they're rather simple, focusing primarily on tension, much like the first half, much like prior to the violin solo, really building on tension rather than any other emotional elements. And then the song wraps up. A couple of violin notes, was that like maybe 8 more bars of a short violin solo that ends with a nice progression towards stability, towards rest. Now, I find this to be a little underwhelming. I think that this song does fantastic at creating an atmosphere, at being vibe driven. And if you can engage with those emotions, and possibly even if you know the lyrics, that might help too, you can feel all of that. And this will be, as the title of the video suggests, a mind-blowing performance. But to me, I had a tough time engaging with it emotionally. It's very two-dimensional. It doesn't change much. There's a lot of constant elements to it. It's a static song overall. And it's not technically impressive either. It just never really grabbed me. And towards the end of the song, though, is when it kind of dawned on me that this, while having musical components, is at its heart performance art. If you are here for the artistic side of it, this is phenomenal, I'm sure. But if you're coming at it as music, I think it's woefully under-delivering. I found myself underwhelmed by this because I was expecting a mind-blowing musical performance. And I don't think that's it. It might be a mind-blowing artistic performance, though. But I am left a bit underwhelmed, having just listened to it, and it just kind of bouncing off of me. Never really meeting my expectations. And part of that is that I had expectations at all. This is one of the bad things about hearing words descriptions before a song. I read mind-blowing performance. Unfortunately, there's just no way I could avoid that. It's the name of the title of the video. I would need, I guess, an extension in Firefox in order to block YouTube titles, but that's not going to work in my day-to-day use of YouTube. But just hearing the words or reading the words mind-blowing performance put me in a specific mind. I'm here for something extraordinary. My expectations get placed pretty high. I'm curious how I would have reacted to this having not read that, or maybe how I would react to it on a second time, now knowing what it is and able to meet it on its own terms. Because I like to take notes. And my notes here are pretty sparse. Talking, spoken word over the bass and beats, atmospheric and vibey, vocal pitch. That's literally all the notes I took. For a 15-minute performance, that is woefully small. There just isn't really anything else technically in it to talk about. It is about the poetry. It's about the delivery of the poetry. It's about the atmosphere that the poetry is delivered in. Many things that I picked up on, but they're not usually what I have the expertise to talk about. And as I mentioned, the one thing that I can talk about, the harmonic atmosphere of this, the timbre of the instruments providing the vibes of the performance, they're very two-dimensional. They do what they do, rhythmically diverse and syncopated and building tension, and that's it. There's nothing else to dive into on that front. I'm going to hit the lyrics in a sense. I'm going to look up the poems that she read during this. We'll discuss that for a second, but that's going to be the end of this video then. All right. So the two poems that were picked out were The Barbarians Are Due Here Today and Ithaca, both written by C.P. Cavafy. Now, Waiting for the Barbarians is about legislation, senators and such, not really doing their job, but instead preparing to meet barbarians that are invading in. There's some questions asked, presumably by people looking at this and wondering what's going on. It says, why isn't anything going on in the Senate? Why are the senators sitting there without legislating? Why did our emperor get up so early? And why is he sitting enthroned at the city's main gates wearing the crown? Why have our two consul and praetors come out today wearing their scarlet togas and have put on so many bracelets with amethyst? Why don't our distinguished orators turn up as usual to make their speeches? These are broken up into several stanzas, and between them are the answers to these questions. The barbarians are coming. Why would the senators make laws now? The barbarians will do the legislating. For the emperor is waiting to receive the barbarian leader. He even has a scroll to give him loaded with titles and imposing names. For the consuls and praetors with their embroidered scarlet togas and bracelets of amethyst, it says that the barbarians are dazzled by such things. For the orators, it says that the barbarians are bored by rhetoric and public speaking. So basically, everything that's going on out of the usual is done to be ready and prepared for these incoming barbarians. But it says that at night, the streets and squares are emptying. Everyone's gone home, lost in thought. There's bewilderment and confusion. What's up with that? It says night has fallen and the barbarians haven't come. And some of our men just come in from the border saying that there are no barbarians any longer. The final stanza says, now what's going to happen without barbarians? Those people were a kind of solution. I think there's two ways to read this. One is that the people don't trust the government to do anything worthwhile. So the barbarians, in a sense, were a type of jingling of the keys in front of them. They weren't doing anything to harm the people. They weren't passing bad laws. It kept them busy and unable to impose negative elements onto the people that they look over. But I think another would be that it's a way of the government to have a diversion for everyone else. Everyone was so focused on the barbarians, it allowed them to do stuff in secrecy. Now, Laurie put her own twist on this. She had mentioned in her recital of the poem at the end, repeating the phrase, "What if we're the barbarians all along?" or something to that effect. I don't know about that read. Although I suppose, well, okay, let me, the barbarians are categorized and showcased in here as stupid, uneducated, and easily entertained. They just want to see things that are sparkly. They're bored by public speaking and rhetoric. And they like having fancy titles and imposing names, even if ultimately it means nothing. As long as it feels like they're treated well and like royalty, they'll be happy. I suppose that this read does work well with the idea of the government putting something sparkly as a diversion for the people. And I think that might be what Laurie was aiming for. What was my second interpretation of this? We, the barbarians, need to have a diversion. We need to have the sparkly jewels and the fancy titles and stuff, something to make us feel like we're a part of everything, even though we aren't. That the barbarians, the story of the barbarians coming was a diversion for the government to do something in secrecy, as all the eyes would be looking at the gates, waiting for the barbarians to happen or to show up. At least that's my interpretation of her line, "What if we are the barbarians?" Not necessarily all of humanity, but simply the idea that the class being ruled are the barbarians, to be treated like children and entertained simply by the ruling class. But then we go into a different poem that seems to have nothing to do with the other. It is about people going on a journey by boat, presumably. It talks about showing up at many harbors and ports to Ithaca. That's the final destination there. And it says that hopefully your journey is a long one, full of adventure and discovery. You will find things of danger like Cyclops and angry Poseidons, but don't be afraid of them. As long as you keep your thoughts raised high and you don't allow them inside of your soul, you'll be fine. Treating those not as physical issues, but general problems on the whole. Basically saying as long as you have a positive outlook on the journey, you'll be fine. There will be hardships, you'll get past them. The next stanza talks about going to many harbors and having the pleasures and joys of seeing new things for the first time. Make sure you stop at Phoenician trading stations and buy fine things like pearls and coral, amber and ebony, sensual perfumes of every kind. And may you visit many Egyptian cities to learn and go on learning from those scholars. So right here, we're talking about going to many places. This isn't just about getting to Ithaca, though that is the final step on this journey, but about experiencing all the things on the way there. And this is really driven home in these final stanzas. It says, keep Ithaca always in your mind. Arriving there is what you're destined for, but don't hurry the journey. It's better if it lasts for years so that you're old by the time you reach the island, wealthy with all that you've gained, and not expecting Ithaca to make you rich. Do what you can on your way to Ithaca to collect experience, knowledge, and wealth, so that when you arrive to your destination, you'll be ready to enjoy that. This is just a journey of life, which I think is a really great poem and something very interesting to hear from Laurie Anderson at this point in her life. She definitely seems like she's had a very adventurous, well-lived life to this point, and she's telling everyone else not to rush it. Get as much experience as you can, enjoy life, find all of the joys, do all of the things, so that when you reach your old age, you're ready to just enjoy that. And I think that's a wonderful message from coming from anyone. But I think coming from someone who's lived a very full life like Laurie has, it really means a lot, because you can feel the passion. It's not just wise words, but wise words of experience at this point. It gives it more heft and more weight. But I really don't understand what that has to do with Barbarians. And unlike the tension of Barbarians, where you can find this division between the two groups, the ruling class, the senators and the legislators, versus the class at the bottom, asking all the questions, trying to figure out what's going on. There's a mystery afoot. Things are going a little strange. Things are a little off. The day-to-day stuff isn't what you would expect. And then the twist at the end that there weren't any barbarians anyways. Well, I suppose there are no barbarians any longer, as if the barbarians just decided not to show up. They had their RSVP, but chose not to come to presumably Rome here. That's what I'm guessing. Yeah, that feels like there's something fishy about that, right? Makes you want to question things. I don't understand how the two correlate, why they're smashed together here. What I'm supposed to take from these two poems back to back. Musically, I think that the tension of the first half of the Waiting for the Barbarians half works really well, but I don't understand how it builds into anything else. I don't know. This feels like two very distinct songs, if we can call it that, performances that just happen to be played back to back. And I think that the varying differences in the compositional side of this from the first half to the second half, it just shows me that they're two very different ideas that just happen to be performed back to back. And the bridge between them, which is the violin solo, I don't get. It's melancholic, it's solemn, and that doesn't really have anything to do with either of these messages lyrically. I thought it was an okay bridge musically. It helped us move from one idea to the next, but now that I know what lyrically or poetically was going on in the two halves of this song, I don't understand the purpose of the bridge at all anymore. So I'm very confused by this. And I think this is one of those cases where I've given my experience with this. And unlike other reactions and analyses where I come away from the song, hopefully having said some stuff that's going to help you appreciate or understand the performance, here, it's just my reaction. It's just how I've interpreted it on my first listen to it. And I'm really curious where other people stand on this. I don't know if too many people are going to have learned anything from this video, which is very different from many of my other videos. But I'm in a place to be educated here. I'm in a place to be in the learner seat and have other people explain to me what they get out of this, how they interpret it, why it might be mind-blowing for them. What is it about this that makes it stand out to you against other artistic works, other musical performances? This is going to wrap the video up. These are my thoughts on Laurie Anderson's Waiting for the Barbarians. What did you think? Did anything stand out to you? Is there anything here that you'd like to add on to what I said, or maybe correct me on if I was wrong about something? If you have a different perspective or opinion on this, different interpretation of it, please put any of that and any thoughts you have in general down into the comment section. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. It takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.